Hey everybody, Dawn Kendrick here with some good news. And the good news is that you're only going to hear good news here. I am a repurposed news reporter, and I am finally doing the stories that have been burning in my heart for so long. They're stories that uplift, encourage, and inspire, and they are real, and they're raw, and they're vulnerable. They're the good stuff stories. And we see it over and over again that through it all, through the middle of our biggest challenges, together we can, together we will. Let's go see the good and be the good. On your mark, get set, let's go. Hey y'all, we are so looking forward to bringing you our God at Work series of stories over the next few months. We named them God at Work in honor of my mama, Marlene Kendrick, who passed away on February 23rd. Because if you knew our mama, you knew those words, God at Work. She was forever teaching us to see God in everything. So this series is for you all as much as it is for ourselves, and reminding ourselves that we can, in fact, allow God to work through us by seeing the good in others and being the good for them. You know what? They say that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Well, Katie Spotz is an endurance athlete, and that's exactly what she took the first mile unwillingly. And she has been uplifting, encouraging, and inspiring ever since. And that's why I'm so glad to be able to introduce you today to Katie Spotz, who not only an endurance athlete, an author, you've broken world records. I think your greatest attribute is your humility. I loved when I met you how humble you were. Thank you for joining us.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I'm coming to y'all from Cleveland, and you actually born and raised in Cleveland. Give me a little window into what was that was like, and maybe what you miss when you're not here.
Yeah, I mean, as kids, we were definitely free range chickens, and we were always riding our bikes and going to the lake, spending time at Menor Headlands. And I think part of the reason I even joined the Coast Guard and am here in Portland stationed is because I've always loved being near and on the water. So when I do move back, I'm looking forward to spending more time on the lake.
And you weren't always an athlete, really, were you, back in the day on these teams that you were on? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So my journey doing endurance really started on the bench. As a kid, I never really had that competitive nature. And when parents or when the teams got too competitive, I was just like, what's the big deal? We're just out here having fun. So I never really took it that seriously. And so I didn't really excel and was more or less a bench warmer. And if you sit on the bench for long enough, you might start to believe that's because you belong there, and you can create a story about, okay, well, I'm just not an athlete. And so in my senior year of high school, I had to take a PE class, and by process of elimination, I tried to find the easiest class, and it was a running walking class. And so I was a little frustrated. I was trying to avoid this class, dragging my feet, thinking it was a waste of time. And so I was just walking the first few weeks of that class. And that's where I was like, well, I'm already forced to be here. I'm pretty bored. Is it even humanly possible? Can I even run 1 mile straight? And in my mind, I was like, maybe, maybe not. And I don't have any teammates to let down. I don't have any pressure from coaches. And it was a very just curious in the moment thing. And it was eight laps around the track. And I had no idea about pacing myself. So I just basically ran as fast as I could because I didn't know how long I would last. I didn't know how many minutes I would last. And so it was very painful, but yeah, that 1 mile really was a turning point because it was no longer about a coach not putting me in the game, but me not putting myself, and realizing that I was my biggest limitation, and that I could kind of change that story, that I'm not I can't run 1 mile. And that's kind of what I believed. I couldn't do it. And so when I realized that I could, it was that shift of what are all the things running, not running, that I'm telling myself that I can't do that maybe I can. And just having that, I don't know, like childlike wonder of, is this possible? I mean, as kids, you always do that. Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do that? And as an adult, I think we start to lose that, but kind of bringing back that curiosity of, hey, what is actually possible? So,
What is possible? And that's why I know you spoke to me, and I know that so many people listening to this right now maybe are in the same situation. And you would say, take the next best step.
yeah, I mean, there are people that will tell me, like, oh, I could never do that. And the first thing I say is, like, yeah, I thought that exact same thought. I thought I could never do it. I thought it would be too hard. I thought, who am I to think I could do that? I thought, those are all the thoughts that I think are completely normal and part of, the journey. And that's what makes it so rewarding, because you can kind of face that. And I mean, it wasn't going from 1 mile to like 100 miles took a very long time. And it's not saying that you don't have to put that time and that effort in. But I think people will be surprised by how much they can do. And I don't know, there's so many great quotes to draw inspiration from. And I think one of them that I like is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Like, what if you just tried? There's even like a TED talk of someone who like was trying to intentionally be rejected. And after, facing rejection or setback, at a certain point, he no longer took it personally and kind of faced that fear of, like, even if you attempt to do something and fail, you're more than likely going to move along further than if you didn't even have that target. So there's a lot to be said about even failing. Like, you're going to get further on this journey if you're reaching for maybe more than you can do. So yeah, there's so much to learn through endurance that can be a parallel to life outside of it too. So even if you don't run, I hope, this message can apply to other parts of your life.
Right, because spoiler alert, you actually have won 5. I can hardly even say it. It makes me tired. 5 Ironman triathlons, correct?
Yes.
Cycled across America, 325-mile river swim. Like, the resume is ridiculous. 100-mile nonstop run in less than 20 hours, which you've actually, wasn't it 30 hours that the farthest you've gone was almost, tell me.
So the farthest run nonstop was a run across Maine. This was at the height of COVID. All the races were shut down. And so it was a 31 hour run nonstop to do about 140 miles. I will also say, I think the hardest mile I ever ran was my first one, like, because not necessarily because it was physically, but mentally, I had to overcome things that I overcame to be able to do that. So every mile you do makes it easier to do the next one. And there is a lot that I've learned just in how motivation works. Like, I think people assume I have to be motivated. I'm not motivated. I could never do that because I'm not motivated. And truthfully, a lot of the things that I've done, I wasn't motivated until after I began. So I think that's a stumbling block that I thought you had to like wake up to a Nike commercial to be able to do these things, but you can actually do these things. And it's like a late friend to the party. Motivation shows up when you do. So I think that, I don't know, that made it easier to realize that you don't need to feel a certain way to do a certain thing. And that, motivation is like momentum. And so it was all of those feats were very difficult for different reasons, like sleep deprivation, and sometimes there's hallucination, and fueling and cramping and all those things. But I still go back to that first mile as really the turning point to be able to do. I mean, there was no way I was going to do 140 miles unless I learned how to work through the challenges of 1 mile.
Yeah. And for everyone who hasn't done 140 miles, it's inspiration. And again, it's not just about running, it's about whatever the next best step to being your authentic self is. That's your language, that's my language. And sometimes it's very cliche, like a boutique work, our authentic, vulnerable self. Well, you really are. And I we need to mention right out of the gate that you did this great adventure where you solo rode across the Atlantic, making you the youngest, correct, and only American to row the Atlantic Ocean, correct?
Yes. So the first American go mainland to mainland, and the youngest to do it solo. So that took 70 days, no follow boat, and the whole purpose behind all these adventures is water. So that raised about $100,000 for clean water. And to date, there's about 46,000 people across 16 countries that have gained access to clean water. With, I mean, just an army of people, of Rotary clubs and schools and churches and businesses all kind of adding their drop in the bucket. So it's been, I mean, a lot of these journeys have been solo, but there's always a real team behind, making it more than just an adventure and really making it something that lives beyond, the 70 days or whatever, however long the adventure is.
That's a long, however long, that's a long time. And it's H2O for Life, correct? That you've raised
Yes.
all this money for people who aren't able to take clean water for granted like we do. And I want to come back and talk more about that, Ro, but I also want to start where I met you, was on the final leg of another record that you hit, 11 ultra marathons, 11 days for 11 clean water projects in Uganda. And that's where I met you, here in Cleveland on the final leg. Tell me about that final leg.
Oh gosh. I mean, I felt like the female version of Forrest Gump. It was very encouraging because Cleveland really showed up, and there were a few dozen runners on that final day. Really great weather. I mean, it was the perfect way to finish that journey. And I mean, even being through the national park and having those trails, there's a big difference between running on roads and trails, just with your joints. And so the last day, I mean, my body really felt great. And my crew and we reached Edgewater Park around noon, and that's when the last 31 miles was completed and celebrated by jumping into Lake Erie. It was a very surreal experience to be dreaming of something for really years. That the idea of running across Ohio was something that, I mean, ever since I heard about the trail that goes all across the state, I was like, wow, that's a perfect place to do an adventure. And I've done adventures all over the world, and there was something really special to do one in your own backyard. And you don't really need to go far to have that sense of adventure. And there were other people cycling the trail too. So it was nice to share that with other people who are also crossing the state on this Ohio to Erie nature trail from Columbus, from Cincinnati to Columbus back, and then to Cleveland. So and
there were so many people there cheering you on. It was the most, right? And I saw how much when you said you felt like Forrest Gump, I wasn't going to say it, but that's what I thought. Like, they were all that. Remember when he's running and everybody's following him? That's what was happening. And I'm like, we love you. And here's the thing, like, so you're raising the bar as far as an endurance athlete, teaching us how to be endurance people of faith and endurance, and the next step for whatever we're up against. But what I see in you is that you were so transparent when we talked that day. And I wonder if you would share that with our listeners here, that even though you've been raising all of this money for people who may never meet you to have clean water, your words were that you were spiritually thirsty as well at one point. Share that with me, would you?
Yeah, so I started doing a lot of these adventures, eight I guess my first one was 19, 18, cycling across America. And that led to the row, led to swimming the Allegheny, led to cycling across America again, the Ironmans. And there was a certain point where I realized my own emptiness and realizing that so often I think the message is about, having some level of success and then I'll be happy and then I'll feel this and then everything will be okay. And and I really I felt this almost loss, this I get yeah, I just didn't feel what you might expect someone to feel after accomplishing those things. And so if you're continuing to try to fill something and feeling that emptiness, you're probably not filling it with the right things. And so my friend reintroduced me to faith and in a very authentic way. And although I'm running now and I was running then, it's just from a different place. And I realized that I mean, that was my identity. I built this identity about being this endurance athlete. And the problem with that is not the foundation that can, I mean, sustain you. And it's really not, yeah, it's not a strong enough foundation, and we are created and we're here for something more. And and that more is faith, and it is faith in God and realizing that that is my foundation. And so it just transformed the whole experience of doing these things because it's an overflowing rather than um trying to do these things to feel a certain way or to build a certain identity. If you have a solid foundation and identity and knowing that you're loved no matter what, you have purpose no matter what, you can just have so much more confidence and comfort in knowing that, I mean, God already knows your capabilities. And so it really lessened that whole fear of failure because you're not going to disappoint God about abilities he never gave you. And so um yeah, it's more an extension of joy to do endurance now where there is no um hard attachment over whether it's a success or failure, and knowing that there's something bigger, much bigger than myself. And yeah, so faith is everything. I mean, faith comes first. And I think it's only because of faith that I've been able to go back to endurance in a way that's healthy. You see that a lot, that like anyone who might do these events to that level, it's their identity. And that is I just think it's a very dangerous thing if you're, you know, basing everything on that.
Yeah, and I call myself a news reporter with a renewed purpose because in that business, every day I'm saying a TV station after my name for 30 years. Talk about identity. And then comes the opportunity when I met you, 2 years almost to the day. Yeah,
Oh,
it's been
good.
2 years almost to the day. I looked it up, right, and I see you and I'm like, "This is it. This is it." We're not defined by a news station. We're not defined by even the critics that you had when you were training. Lake Erie is one of the hardest places to row, people have told me, because it's so
Oh, yeah.
shallow, and
Yeah.
you were training there, your mentor, and I asked you about that when you came here, that you trained so much for it, but was in the setback that you found the set up, correct?
Oh, yeah. So when I was training for the row across the Atlantic, that is, I mean, I had to train in Lake Erie because that was the only place to train. And um, I don't think most people realize how dangerous, unless they spend time on the water, it can be because it is so shallow and has the highest concentration of shipwrecks with 300. And so I had, it was the end of summer, beginning of fall, and I was in a situation where I was blown into the cliffs, nearly destroyed my boat. Could have, if I mean, I could have been um, unable to do the row if the boat landed in a certain way, and so I had a lot of pushback. I had, if you can't even row Lake Erie, what makes you think you can row the Atlantic? And even in the New York Times was like, yeah, she's trying to do it. Doesn't look like she can. She's not a man and isn't very strong. Like they were just pointing out how I physically didn't look like I could do it. And um, I mean, that was a real turning point in that I could have easily quit at that moment. I mean, the boat. It was a luck that it was even able to be put back together in time. But I mean, I think it's moments like that that I think I just knew. I knew that it didn't make sense. I understand the doubt, but I knew it was a calling that was bigger than the doubts. I knew that um yeah, if you feel so called to do something, there's always going to be people, whether you get in an accident or you don't, that are going to tell you you can't do something. And I mean, it's more about themselves, and you can't say someone else isn't capable of doing something without saying it to yourself first. So it's really just a reflection of their own doubts and limitations and putting them on others. So I think it helped me learn that, I mean, you really can find this strength, and I mean, reaching out to people who love you and who know you, and keeping those people close. And um, yeah, I think it's really moments like that that you can see how much more you're capable of, even though all these things might be setbacks. But it's moments that like that make you realize how much, or there's nothing that happened on the road that was as difficult as that. So it was a blessing in that way, that I was already mentally prepared to handle the worst.
And you, again, you're so speaking my language, and that you're saying the very same things that I wrote in my notes with stars and smiley faces all around.
Aw.
Continuing to ignore our callings. What good is that? And you spoke to me, because I feel called now as a news reporter with a renewed purpose to tell these stories. Like when I met you, I want to roll, if I could just roll what you said to me when I asked you. All the other reporters were, what's the first thing you're going to do? Jump in Lake Erie. I'm like, that's a good question. But here I am asking because I had heard your interview with Bob Goff. I was so inspired by you in ways that didn't have anything to do with any of these statistics that I wrote down. It was because how real you were. And so I'm going to, if I could, roll this answer that you had when I asked about turning your setbacks into your setups. More. And I even took notes. And you said at the time, I didn't know God and his works and how he can work in ways that we don't see coming. You said I needed that setback for confidence to push through. Could you just give us a window into that? Do you believe that now more than ever?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know that God gives me my every ability. So I think in earlier adventures, I had this feeling like it was me all alone, even with sponsors and even with friends and family. But now it's a matter of like just recognizing that it's what I was given, and just knowing that it's a matter of stewarding it in the best way possible.
And that you're stewarding it in the best way possible. And that was 2 years ago, and you haven't stopped. That ACL injury, can you can you first just take me, when you hear that soundbite, can you kind of give me a window into where you've been since then in
Yeah.
in your faith?
So yeah, I mean, I don't come up with these ideas, they're just given to me. So since then, I have done a skate for water. So it was, after doing a biking and a swimming and a rowing and uh, my friend and I just love rollerblading. So we did do a skate for water across the Florida Keys. So from Key Largo to Key West, 113 miles skate. Uh, on the second last day, I was going down a bridge, and I did end up, because the trail stopped abruptly, I did end up tearing my ACL and MCL. I did find out that night, like I did go to the ER, but they didn't tell me that that had happened. So I did, with my friend, finish the next day, not knowing that they were both torn. So that, I mean, obviously I wasn't able to run, but I was able to rebuild within 1 year, going from running, not even being able to walk, to doing a full marathon. So I think it was like 6 months after surgery. So I am finishing up my last month in the Coast Guard. And after this, it is a 2,000-mile kayak from South America to Florida. So it's going to take 3 to 6 months. And we've partnered, my husband and I, we've partnered with the Ugandan Water Project, who was the beneficiary of the Run for Water. So our goal is to help another 10,000 people. So yeah, I think there's faith in every act of doing these things. And I don't know, I feel like you're not doing anyone any favors by not doing what you are called to do. And so long as God continues to call me in these directions and give me these visions and dreams, I mean, it really is a gift to be given a dream, and not something that should be seen as like a burden or something you stuff down. It's a gift. It's not everyone has the ideas you do. Not everyone has the dreams you do. And so it's, yeah, he gives you those for a reason, and it's usually not just to ignore it. So it's just been a fun ride so far. And so part of the kayaking is, I mean, although I can run now, it's always a matter of like, what can you do with what you have? And so after ACL, I really started doing more weights and upper body work. And so, I mean, no matter what setback you have, it can always propel you forward in a new area that you might have not looked into otherwise. And so I'm excited, because normally I don't think I would have been as excited about kayaking, but now that I've had the opportunity to build my upper body because of the ACL surgery and waiting for that to heal, it's going to be really exciting to be back on the water and in touch with some of the skills that I had learned to row across the Atlantic, and doing a navigation course this weekend. And so yeah, definitely learning and getting in touch with the things that I learned back then.
And you didn't even know how to row. I mean, come on. I'm like, you go, girl.
I think that's when these are God moments, when they're too big to make sense for God not to be involved. Like, how can you take someone who didn't even know how to row, and the last American woman to attempt it needed to be rescued, and she was an Olympic rower? I mean, those are God moments. Whenever it's like so, yeah, stacked in this against all odds, I mean, that just has it written all over it.
Yeah, and what a purpose-driven life that you have in doing all of these things for. I say I couldn't have scripted the contract not being renewed, and I'm a writer, but how awesome to be able for now it's our story for his glory is how I feel. Do you sort of feel like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I I think it's easy to be putting people on pedestals and platforms, and almost putting it, and I feel like it's really redirecting it to what it is really about, which is God giving us all of our gifts and our abilities, and a way to celebrate who God is. And so, yeah, it would make me very uncomfortable if it was directed towards me, because we know where it comes from. So,
Amen. And in my former life as a broadcast news reporter, we listen for sound bites. You have a million of them. If I was trying to find a sound bite right now, you keep speaking the kinds of sound bites, let's be honest, that we didn't ever really put on the news. We didn't really, no one was asking those questions. And now I have the opportunity. And for you to be so kind in all that you're doing and to show up for this interview today, my prayer is that whoever is in with earshot of this is even just a fraction as inspired by you as I am, in the real ways, in the humility ways, in the reinventing, in taking the curveballs like an ACL. Did you say you had 2 ACL tears?
I had my MCL and ACL. So my MCL could heal on its own, but the ACL did require surgery. And yeah, I guess a 6 to 8 month recovery time. But yeah.
And I'm familiar with that because I was kickboxing years ago to get in better shape. I bought 6 classes. And on the 5th one, by the way, there's a 6th one out there if you'd like it now that your ACL's back. I did some stupid, over eager beaver, Mr. Miyagi type hip skip jump. The guy thought that I could do it. I should have said no. But next thing you know, I landed. I'm like, I heard something. And sure enough, the doctor's words were shredded ACL. Your ACL is shredded.
No.
And the irony in it, right? My friend, I was trying to get in shape, and then I spent 6 months not even moving hardly. I was like, this is a moment we call, really, God, really? But I love that you shared your story because if for people listening, what came out of that for me, when I made that first revolution around on that bike and that physical therapy, it's so important, as you know, tears, because you've passed that crucial point. And that's when I adopted my mantra: patience, humility, gratitude, repeat. And I say it all day long: patience to get to sit still and to heal, humility to gain some weight instead of having lost it, and gratitude for the very fact that he has something that he's going to make for good out of this. Romans 8:28, that he works all things together for good. All things. Paul didn't mince words there, And so my physical therapist, we called my ACL Nacho. It was a cadaver ACL. Did you get a cadaver ACL?
Mm-mm.
We called him Nacho as a nacho ACL. It's somebody else's ACL.
I did ask about that, and he said fresh is better than frozen. So I was like, okay, I'll trust your judgment.
Well, and I'm forever grateful for that person who, it wasn't a life-saving donation, but it was a lifestyle saving for me. And guess what I've started doing to no more running? I started rollerblading again. And I think we might be you and your friends and I, the only people left. It's hard to even find a place that maintains them and stuff. It was popular like in the 80s, right? Now I put my helmet on.
Oh yeah, definitely wearing the helmet, but it's so fun. Yeah, I think as long as you can find a stretch I have a hard time stopping, so I definitely need to find flatter, but if you're able to find some good trails and good pavement, paved trails, then yeah, it's I love rollerblading.
Or maybe just from Key Largo to Key West. You're always raising the bar.
This is pretty much how every adventure goes. It was fun until it wasn't, and then it got fun again. So,
and let's just not lose sight of the fact that H2O for Life is on the receiving end, because it's not all about you, and you're leaving this legacy for kids and families who may not ever even meet you. So can you get us up to speed? Like, how, I know, like you said, you'll be kayaking. You're not even finished yet, but where do we stand right now in numbers, in terms of numbers of people who you've helped have clean water?
So since the row in 2010, there's been a bike for water, swim for water, row for water, skate for water, now a kayaking journey for water, and there's 46,000 people across 16 countries. So there's some in Africa, South and Central America, even some here in the United States, like the Navajo Nation, and so there's projects everywhere. And what's very encouraging is that for as little as about $30, someone could get clean water for life, depending on whether it's like a well or a borehole or water filtration. And so there are a lot of problems in our world that we don't have the solution, we don't have the technology, and water's not that. I mean, we do have some proven technologies that are changing not just the environment, but they're changing health. It's changing education. Sometimes kids can't go to school because they're too sick from the dirty water, or they're spending hours and hours to collect water that isn't even clean. And so it helps with health, education, women empowerment, because it frees up women's time, because it's women and children that are usually responsible to bear the burden of a life without clean water. And I mean, I've been doing this for fundraising for about, a decade or so. And no one has ever said to me, no, I don't think we should help people without clean water. I mean, it's something that we know we all need, and we can all agree that everyone deserves to live a life that they're thriving and aren't held back because of unsafe drinking water. So it's been very easy to want to do something as soon as I found out about the water crisis. I found out about the water crisis in college, and it was a very like, wait, what moment? Because I've been born and raised on Lake Erie, one of the greatest sources of fresh water on our planet. And it was something, that I had this abundance type mindset. And so once I realized it's not like that, and once I realized that this is a crisis in our world, it was like, why? Why is it like that? How can it be like that? I don't understand. And it's been great to find partners who are going out there and doing it. And so I get the fun job and they do the real work. And I do the fun job of just, talking about the cause and letting people in and inviting them to be a part of it. And so H2O for Life, one of their partners is Ugandan Water Project. And so that if anyone wants to donate, you can just go to kdspotz.com. And the overall goal is to help 100,000 people through adventure. So this next campaign is for helping another 10,000 people in Uganda. So it's at the very beginning stages of fundraising, but I think we have around 4,000 as of yesterday with the Rotary Club and Rotary Act helping out. So yeah, anything is greatly appreciated.
And this is how you are able to see the good in these deserving families and then to be the good for them. That's what we can all do. We could start today, even like just across the street, truly. And I want to, as I begin to wrap this up, it occurs to me, you were on that boat, the ocean rowboat. Is that what they call it?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So for 70 days, is that what you said?
70 days. Yeah.
By yourself?
Yeah. Whenever I speak at schools, I'm like, it's like your whole summer break just out on the ocean.
So what does that look like? I mean, I'm thinking of Tom Hanks with his ball. What was the ball? The volleyball?
Oh yeah, I had because it was only 19 feet. I had a mini Wilson, like a little tennis ball. A Rotary Club gifted me with that, and
awesome.
They had their own version. So every week they'd pass it off to someone and they'd give an update to their club. And so, yeah, I mean, it was life was simplified in that it really was kind of like eat, sleep, row. And there's nothing else you can do. So motivation wasn't an issue because what else? I mean, I would be staring at a wall if I wasn't rowing. So it you really force yourself to dig deep because there is no other option but to dig deep. And so I would row about 10 to 12 hours a day, have meals, make it with my jet boil stove. Sometimes I would get in the water while I was tethered to the boat and scrub barnacles and do a little snorkeling and see the fish following me, do a little bit of blogging and tidying up. But it really was that, like, eat, sleep, row, listen to some podcasts, listen to some music on my iPod. And even navigation, like, I didn't have to navigate around islands. I just had to head west. And so I feel like it was a very simple way of life for sure.
Yeah, and did you say that sea turtles would sometimes come right up on your boat?
Oh yeah. So I had like my favorite was the glowing plankton. So at night, I mean, hallucinations do happen when you're sleep deprived. So I was like, whoa, is this happening? But no, it actually, I was so focused on getting the gear and shipping the boat and all those other things that I wasn't researching what I would see. And so I did see glowing plankton, which is a glowing plankton, a type of phosphorescence. So it basically looked like there was glitter in the water and activated by movement. So it would be all around my boat every time my oar hit the water. And so that was a very, I mean, it was breathtaking. I mean, seeing thousands of stars across the pitch black sky and then seeing that glowing. I mean, it's like National Geographic stuff. So I definitely had a lot of visitors with the marine wildlife, like dolphins and
Wow.
yeah, pods of dolphins surrounding my boat. And when I did the run across Ohio, my mom put these big inflatable dolphins because it was at the fourth way mark on my row. I wanted to do something to celebrate this milestone. I wasn't sure what to do. And then all of a sudden, a pod of dolphins does all these like flips and tricks. And it was just this like cheerleading type moment. And so even on my run across Ohio, my mom put some massive dolphin inflatables in the trees as my, like, cheering me on when I was looking for, at the exact moment I was looking for it. So yeah.
And didn't your mama wrote you a note for every day on your boat?
Good.
A
Yeah.
note on your boat that rhymes. That was good mamas are such a gift.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was so thoughtful. And I did have a satellite phone to connect back on land, but some days that wouldn't work. And so even though I was thousands of miles away, I very much felt connected. And I mean, you could be without people physically, but still feel that connection if you have that foundation of love. And so it was, I mean, being socially isolated can be like the worst form of punishment, like solitary confinement. And I just think that if you have those connections with family and friends, you can maintain it and you can feel it no matter where you are.
And I can hear probably busy mamas listening to this say, "Oh, I would love 70 days by myself to look at plankton," So we always want what we don't have. Listen, I want to ask your advice. Maybe you've heard of this because he's from Paynesville near Menor. But my friend Guy Phillips is joining 3 other veterans, Army veterans, and they are going to row part of the Atlantic. I think only 30 days is what they're expected to do, but to raise awareness for veteran death by suicide and PTSD, and to raise awareness for that. And so I thought about when you said it was just you, because all your friends said, not, maybe not. We'll say some prayers. We'll see you when you get back. Good luck. But what kind of advice do you have for 4 grown men in a boat that size for 30 days or more? But again, seeing the good and being the good for others. Any advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're in an environment that's so far from beyond and different and from everyday life, you can get kind of lost in that and think that's the only thing that exists. And I think that if you have a strong enough why, you can figure out how, and you can figure out, the why, just keep going back to that why you're doing it, and focusing on that. I mean, yeah, if you have a strong enough why, you can figure out how. So I think it's really important to really hone in on that, and be honest. And I mean, I wrote like a letter to my future self and did things like that, so that, because I knew emotionally, I'd be hungry, I'd be tired, I'd be lonely, I'd be all these things. And so I kind of wanted to, in a level-headed state, write what I know is true, so that when I do get to that place, I know how to get back out of it. And I would say that just because you think you can't do something doesn't mean you're right. I think it's easy sometimes to be like, oh, well, I feel like quitting, so I guess I'm going to quit. But there's always choice. And I think, in those emotional states, you might overlook, like, no matter how, frustrated I feel, there's still choice. And then I think the final thing is, knowing your limit. I mean, even before the run across Ohio, there are some telltale signs of, like, you want to push yourself, but you don't want to push yourself so hard that you're causing damage to yourself, especially long term. So just being mindful that when you're doing things like this, I mean, yeah, obviously there are some physical discomforts, but not pushing beyond the point that's healthy, and identifying what that is beforehand is, I think, healthy too.
And still today, with every word, you continue to inspire me. Talk about sound bites. And here's what it occurs to me, again, a former reporter. These are not forced sound bites. You have zero script in front of you. You speak from your heart, and you speak from a place of humility and rooted in faith. So anyone listening to this, you know what? That is our proven recipe, isn't it, my friend? That's it. Whatever you have in front of you. Yeah. And I wonder, could I wrap up this this interview, even though I hate to? I want to be respectful of your time. Yesterday was the day, 4 years to the day, that we buried my friend Cheryl, who was a younger than me, and she was a mama, had 2 kids, and she was a cancer warrior. But as I was watching an interview with you yesterday, you mentioned that sea turtles would crawl up on the boat on the day for, I believe, we say God weaves, now watch him work. Like, I believe some things are like, oh, downloads from up above. Can I show you Cheryl really quickly? This is Cheryl, okay, at a fundraiser she put on for the Cleveland Clinic, okay, but this was just weeks before she ended up passing, and she kept dressing up and showing up every day. But you know what? Anyone who knows me knows that Cheryl left this inspiration for me. Sea turtles, with a card. This is not an accident, I don't think, Katie. And because the story of the sea turtles that have to strengthen their own flippers to get to the ocean. No one can do it for them. You can't pick them up. They need to strengthen their flippers. So she wrote, strengthen your flippers, my friend, and just keep swimming. And look at that. Would you look at the verse that she put up at the top? I'm telling you, again, this is yesterday, preparing for your interview on the 4-year mark that my Cheryl passed away. I'm going to crawl it at the bottom. Can you see it enough to read it, Katie?
And we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance.
Endurance. That's you. You're the endurance athlete. The interview I'm preparing for, Romans 5:3. Like, Paul, if Paul's saying that, then, we could take a lesson from that, because he went through a lot more than we ever will. But I thought if I could just close it with that even as you inspire me, I would say to anyone listening to this, just keep your eyes open for ways in which he's weaving. And the message from Katie Spotz today, to wrap it up, a sentence or two, is what?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a strong enough why, you can figure out how, and just really be honest with yourself about, what God has called you to do, and doing what you can to honor and follow that.
That's it. Katie, thank you so much. Endurance athlete who continues to raise the bar. Good luck in all the kayaking and the rollerblading and everything else that you're doing going forward. And I'm so grateful for you. Be careful, and God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye.
This has been a Grassroots Good Stuff family production. Big love and gratitude to our friend Carlos Jones, who is the talented voice and creator behind this music that sets the tone for these good stuff stories. Huge gratitude and love as well for our social media director. She is Danielle Folk and is consistently going above and beyond. Follow her at Farmhouse Storyteller. And to the producer, My Trevi, the glue that holds together the moving parts of this God-inspired endeavor. TheGoodStuffFamily.com is where you'll find links for all the things we're doing, including how to be a sponsor of a story. So grateful for our faithful sponsors who have already made so much of what we do possible. And of course, big love and gratitude for you, the listeners, helping to grow this Good Stuff family tree 2023. Welcome to the family.